So we're down in BOC and Brad's trying to get permission to be late show. And we called earlier and Delva got us into it. Yeah, she remoted onto his desktop and did something. Well, whatever she did earlier was perfect. It needs admin approval. You should do it. Great. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Well, do you guys want to come up here, Tim? Thank you. Just wherever, just so that they can see it. Yeah, sure. Come on back. Well, thanks everybody for being here. I'm Brad Berry, the District Attorney, Yamhill County District Attorney. I want to introduce a few folks that are here, and actually I'm going to let George introduce the Salem staff who are here.
Okay. I'm George Burke. I'm Deputy Chief of Investigations for Salem Police, Detective Scott Evans, Chief Jerry Moore, and Lieutenant Mike Bennett, who's in the back of the room.
And this is our sheriff, Tim Svensson, from Yamhill County, and Captain Bowdle is in the back of the room with Detective Bennett. I thought it was really important in trying to answer some of the questions today that we have these guys here. This has been really a relentless investigation. It's been an investigation that's been totally collaborative between members of the Yamhill County Sheriff's Office and the Salem PD. I mentioned to these guys earlier this morning that we've not really worked with Salem PD very much, but this is how it should work. When you cross jurisdictions, crime doesn't stop at a county line. It just works. And the ability of them to all work together really has brought us to the point where, as you know, the bodies were recovered yesterday. So a couple caveats before we get started on questions. Some of the questions you ask I may not know the answer to. I may turn to these guys. I will tell you many of the detectives involved in this case are not here today. And that's in part they're getting a well-deserved couple of days off. They've been working just 24/7, it seems like. So they're getting a little bit of time off now that we've kind of reached the point we're at. We're going to share a little information about where the bodies were recovered, because I'm sure we're going to get that question. And then I'm going to open it up to questions. Again, back on a couple of caveats. One, there are a lot of things that we can't share with you. This investigation continues on. When we had the same kind of meeting after the original arraignment of Mr. Wolfe, it was the same kind of rules that we have today. I'll answer what I can, but just bear with me if I tell you that I can't get into a particular area on it. There are two things we have to protect. One, the ongoing investigation. The other thing is I have an obligation ethically as a prosecutor to see that we don't do anything to impair the defendant's ability to get a fair trial. So our keeping information rather than trying it in the press, as the saying goes, is important to see that he has an opportunity to defend himself completely. So with that, I'm going to, these guys know a little better than I can. Kill that light a little. I'm going to show you just a couple of things here so that you can, I'm going to have to move, there it is. So as you're looking at this area, this is the city of Yamhill. And I'm going to show it here on the other map, city of Yamhill. And if you're coming out of Yamhill is Pike Road, which turns into Turner Creek Road, and then comes up into this area, this very heavily wooded area, about 10 miles west of the city of Yamhill. This is kind of hard to see the roadways from a typical satellite view, but that's why we asked, through the courtesy of the Yamhill County Assessor's Office, we asked that this be put up for us. So this is the city of Yamhill here, down in the corner, and then this is the area where the bodies were recovered, up in this area, and this is the blow up of this area. So this is Turner Creek Road. It's about here that it goes from paved to gravel. It was about another 1.5 miles up from when it turned to gravel, and then there are a couple of spur roads that come off of it that ultimately the search began to concentrate on. There have been other searches up in this area prior to this that were fruitless, that did not develop anything for us. But this is the area where we were, where the investigators were, and ultimately the 2 bodies were found. So with that then, I'm going to open it to questions. Let's try to be organized. Paul?
Cause and manner of death,
We don't have that yet. They are doing other testing on that. I expect that we'll get it. I'm pretty confident that it will be a homicide. I don't have much question about that, as you can tell. That's why we've filed charges even before we had the 2 bodies. But the medical examiner could not say yesterday what the exact cause of manner was yet without the further tests.
Is it accurate that it was about a 2-hour search before the bodies were located?
This particular search in this limited area was about 2 hours, correct?
And can you describe how you were able to be so efficient in that? Who gave you the information that they were in that area?
I can't tell you how the information came about. We were aware that Mr. Wolfe is familiar with this area up here. We think I was actually advised of this morning, recreations up there, like fishing, things like that. There are other areas within the Weyerhaeuser property that we believe he's actually had permits before to cut firewood, or up in that area. We're not exactly sure where that was, but we were aware that he was familiar with the area.
But did you not get any information from a specific person to say they're there?
This was just it was really good detective work. It was good putting pieces together, going through to begin to narrow the area that they needed to look.
So Mr. Wolfe hasn't told you that where the bodies were?
The bodies were found by the work from the detectives.
Could you tell us a little bit more about some of the evidence that you initially collected that made you believe that Mr. Wolfe was connected to their missing?
I'm trying to think. Obviously, that conclusion came up relatively early on in the investigation. I think he's been charged now, if it's 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks plus ago, he was arrested and was charged. As the investigation went on, and this has been in the press already, so I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said, there really was no other person who had, as we could tell, anything to gain from her death. So whether or not we can say exactly what the motive is, we certainly have working theories on that. But that's how the investigators began to hone in on Mr. Wolfe as a suspect, and then ultimately hone in on the investigation into many things, his comings and goings and things like that.
I guess maybe I'm not asking this right.
Well, you probably are, but I'm probably avoiding giving you details.
Is there physical evidence that you can tell us about that was found?
There is physical evidence that has been found. I will tell you there have been, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to turn to these guys. We have 20 search warrants so far? Probably close to 20 search warrants have been obtained and executed in this investigation. No, that's not an exact number, but there have been a lot of them. And through that, piece after piece was gathered and put this together along with other information that the officers developed.
Have you found a firearm used in the shooting of Karissa?
I can tell you we have found a firearm. I can't tell you if it's the firearm.
Can you say if Mr. Wolfe's wife is a cooperating witness, or what her involvement, if any, would be in this?
No, I can't say one way or the other.
Is she a person of interest?
I would say that we continue to look to see was there anybody else involved in this, and she certainly would have as much access to Mr. Wolfe as anybody. But I'm not going to say that she's a person of interest or a suspect.
There were reports in the media that she was involved in some type of harassment, or how we would say it, of Karissa prior to Karissa's death.
And I'm unfamiliar with that. It may well be accurate, but I'm unfamiliar with it.
Can you talk about the condition of the remains when they were found? You know, was it apparent and obvious that it was a mom and child?
No, not initially. it wasn't, and I got to be really careful. I can't get into the details. Obviously, it would be releasing a lot of evidentiary information that we have. The bodies were partially hidden, maybe more than partially, but they were hidden. So it took some time for the investigators. They believed what they had, but it actually took, with the assistance of the crime lab, bringing them to an area where they could be looked at and determine that, in fact, we believed at the time. I got the call. I was in Eugene when I got the call, actually, from the sheriff that they'd been found, and they believed that it was all consistent with the size and 2 bodies. But it wasn't until the lab, several hours later, actually was on scene that we verified that, in fact, that's what we have. And then it wasn't until yesterday at the autopsy that we got a final confirmation from the medical examiner.
Partially hidden?
Partially hidden.
In a field or?
In a very heavily wooded area.
And what does it mean, partially hidden?
Well, they obviously found him. So there were parts of the, again, I can't get into too much detail, but ultimately they were identified. There was debris and other things that were covering them, but not completely to the point where it couldn't discover them.
Just natural debris like undergrowth or something?
I would not term it that it was natural, that the debris covering it was naturally occurred there.
You mentioned that you had searched this area before,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing came out of those initial searches.
The sheriff can probably point out better where the other searches were.
Yeah, so based on some of the initial areas, we had several different locations we wanted to look at. And so about a mile and a half up was one particular area that we set up a command post and searched that area a couple weeks ago. And then we regrouped, brought in another group of searchers, and approximately 40 to 50 individuals, and identified another area, and we set up command posts in a similar spot, and then divvied all the resources out into that area. And that's one of the reasons why we were able to, within short order, come across it, because of the amount of people we had out there searching.
Is this private property?
It is. It belongs to Weyerhaeuser.
Mm-hmm. And how long did you guys decide, at what point did you decide to research this area before you actually found the bodies?
You guys know?
We've been looking.
Yeah, there have been multiple searches in various areas, as you know, when the case first broke. I think your question is how long before they went up there to do this search had they decided to go back and do the search?
Exactly.
And I do know that detectives from the Yamhill County Sheriff's Office, and I don't know whether Salem also, went up there to kind of, it's probably not fair to say to dry run, to kind of get the lay of the land, to see if there are areas up there that were of interest. They did not locate any at the time, but that was not a major search effort like the one from Saturday that went into this particular area and honed in on that area.
And forgive me, I guess my question is, did you guys get a tip on Saturday to then relaunch the search in this area?
No, the information leading them to that spot has been gathered over time.
And that information was simply that he liked to hunt and fish up there, that he was known to go in that area?
There's really a lot more than that, but I can't get into that part of the details of the investigation. That's really pretty sensitive stuff, yeah.
How many people were out helping on Saturday?
Sure.
We had about, I want to say, anywhere between 40 to 50 searchers between Washington County, had their Explorer, SAR group out. We've had some help with North Star and Mountain Wave. We had representatives from the Salem Police Department, our detectives, and a large number of our search and rescue folks, plus the McMinnville Fire Department.
As well as there are officers from Oregon State Police, City of Yamhill Police, also out there.
I realize you're still waiting for the autopsy results, but were there any obvious signs of trauma to William? Do you think that was obvious?
I can't answer that. I did not attend the autopsy. My chief deputy was actually there, and I don't think anybody here was at the autopsy, so I don't have the answer to that question.
Would you describe Mr. Wolfe as cooperative or uncooperative to your investigation?
I don't want to characterize that. I think that gets into areas where potentially it could be developed in a way that try to cast a light on him that is favorable to the state and unfavorable to him. So I don't want to go there.
Have you been able to put together a timeline estimating when and where the murders occurred?
Yes. So we know that they were kidnapped on the night of the 13th, May 13th, into the early morning hours of the 14th. We are confident from information we have that they were dead by the 16th. I can't tell you that I have information that tells me exactly did it happen on the early morning hours of the 14th. I can't answer that. We know we have that next step where we can. I can say that I know by the 16th they were deceased.
How about the where? Location of.
Again, I honestly I don't know. We have some ideas, but not exactly.
You said a gun was recovered. Can you talk about the type of firearm? Was it
I don't know what
handgun?
I don't know what kind it is personally.
And we don't know whether it was used in the commission of the.
We do not as of yet. Certainly that'll be looked into.
Was it found with the bodies?
It was not.
Was it found? When was it found? Time-wise?
First search. Wasn't it first search? I think it was first searches on some of the initial searches that were done. So it was. We're talking now around probably towards the 19th, 20th. I think is when the first searches began.
Can you say where?
I can't.
So it wasn't out in the fields?
Out.
It wasn't like.
Oh, like out here?
Yeah.
No, it was not.
No.
Were the bodies found together?
They were. Paul?
Will he be in court or on video on Thursday?
That's a good question. Actually, a lot of you, a lot of media has been verifying that he will be arraigned on the indictment on the 20th. I talked to his attorney minutes before I came down here. He's asking to move it to the 21st because he has another hearing in Multnomah County on the 20th that he's not sure he'll be done in time to get out here for it. So again, check with us. I'm expecting it now to be on the 21st. To answer your question, he'll be on video.
At the same time?
1:30. 1:30, yes.
Brad, as horrible as it is to make this discovery, I guess there's some closure there, but also, can you just describe what that means for the investigation? Is this a huge step forward? What other avenues might open up? Or just characterize what this discovery means to the investigation?
A couple of things. As we were, this was really tough on investigators out there. Obviously they've been working, and I mean relentlessly, to find these two. But at the same time, it was really hard. It was a really hard discovery that they made. So as far as from the prosecution, from the case getting put together, it's a very different type of prosecution where we actually have the bodies than if we didn't. I felt that we had sufficient evidence to endorse him being arrested on it and to approach a grand jury on this, but certainly without the bodies, the case was a very different case, a tougher case moving forward.
Does this cement the case against him?
I'm not going to say it cements the case. Obviously, he's got the right to put forth a defense. I don't know what that defense will be yet. I don't know if it's didn't do it or something else. So I'm not going to speculate on that.
The probable cause affidavit mentions some type of a white trash bag. Has that bag been recovered? And
Not to my knowledge.
Did you? Okay. Is there anything relevant about that trash bag?
Well, it's relevant in the sense that it wasn't there when he left, and it was there when he came back. But beyond that, because we haven't recovered it, I don't know how important it is.
Can you just one more time, to be clear, there wasn't one individual tip that came in this weekend or on Friday or Thursday or any time that led you guys back up to that area? It was a continuation based on things that you learned along the way?
I will tell you pieces of things that were narrowing the area, the scope. And now remember, they were, as the sheriff said, they were in another area that kind of up there, but I don't know, a mile or two away the first time?
Well, from the entrance into the next spur road, about a half mile away, but from as a crow flies, we were probably within 800 yards.
So, and that was a good week plus before, I think, when they were out there the first time. So as the information came, and really as the detectives on this case began to get information and narrow it down, it began to focus on this area. And it was just, they just didn't find them the first time out. As close as, and I appreciate the sheriff saying that, as close as they were, they just didn't find them.
This wasn't one person that told you they're gonna be there
That's-
in this particular.
It's a lot of work putting information together that kept saying, this is where we need to go look again.
Who made the discovery? Was it a volunteer searcher? Was it a canine that was helping in the search?
I think technically it was the McMinnville Fire Department
Yeah.
folks who made the actual discovery, who were involved in the search. Anything else? Appreciate everybody being here. And I'm saying this selfishly because it's a lot easier for me to do this once than to answer 20 calls. So I appreciate you being here and taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.